From the burning mazes of the Arizona desert to the slot machine-clad boardwalks of New Jersey, it's the Imaginarium with Scott and Todd. I'm Scott Colbert.
And I'm the horror nerd, Todd Staruch.
Before we get into our subject today, just a little bit of an addendum, I suppose, to last week's show. I'm going to say this, and I actually really don't care who I offend, but I'm a little bit upset because last week's show was the lowest listened to show that we've ever done.
Wow, we suck.
We did. We sucked hard. And I can only think that it was the subject matter, and perhaps people just didn't want to listen to it so close on the heels of the actual event itself. And I could kind of understand that, but I'm still a little bit hurt and a little bit shocked that it got the reception or lack of reception that it has. I want to urge everybody to go back and listen to it.
Yeah, folks. I realize there's some, and I don't mean to make light of anything, but there's a little shameless self-promotion as always. But I do urge everybody. We had a guest on last week who Jonathan, who lives in Orlando. Is heavily involved in the gay community in Orlando, who's very close to the events there, and I urge everybody to go back, listen to the episode, and listen to what he has to say.
Last week, they had the filibuster in the Senate, and this week, today, as a matter of fact, as we're recording this, which is Wednesday, the 22nd. There's a sit-in in the House of Representatives. All the Democrats are having a sit-in to get a vote on sensible gun control laws. And so what does Speaker of the House do? He calls a recess so all the cameras on C-SPAN are shut down so nobody can see what's going on.
Right? Democracy at work, ladies and gentlemen. Democracy at work.
Fortunately, we have social media, and there are several congressmen who are smart enough to broadcast it through Periscope. And C-SPAN is actually broadcasting some of those Periscope feeds. Yeah, so Paul Ryan's plan of shutting everything down didn't work, and it's actually really just going to backfire in their face. It's like everything they try to, and I don't want to go off on a political thing because we do have something to talk about today. But while we're on this subject, I have to say, they are doing everything to shoot themselves in the fucking foot that they possibly can. It's like they don't want to win elections ever again.
It is astonishing to me. And I've been following this along, and I've been paying attention to the social media response. And, and of course, there are people who are saying that these Democrats are only doing this because it's an election year. And I'm sure there is some of that. These are politicians after all, but at some point they do hopefully end up following the will of the people. And as we mentioned on last week's show, Jonathan brought up a statistic that even 73% of NRA members support reasonable changes to gun control legislation. So at some point, our elected officials are going to have to follow the will of the people.
I've heard that. Well, it's just a stunt. It's an election year. You know what? I don't give a fuck if it's an election year or not. If they're doing it for whatever reason, at least, God damn it, they're doing something. Exactly. Which is more than what I can say for anybody else.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's when an athlete does something nice, or a public person does something nice, goes to a children's hospital or makes a donation. Right away, all the cynics in the world, they're only doing that for publicity. Well, you know what? Fuck it. So what if they are? At least they brightened somebody's day, made some cancer kid happy somewhere. So who gives a shit why they did it?
Exactly. All right. Well, with all of our tirades out of the way now, yes. What are we talking about today?
Well, it's something that I've thought about for a long time, and I've posted on social media a lot. But it was
boobs. We talking about big boobs?
We could, which is a subject near and dear to my heart. But not this time, Scott. Sorry, folks. Sorry to let you down. Um, but I want to talk about humor and specifically so-called limits on humor. What sparked it today was someone in my newsfeed posted a post that said rape jokes and sexist jokes are never funny, and if you think they are, please unfriend me right now.
Mm.
And that made me think because I've posted about humor many times and limits on humor and what people find funny, and I've often posed the question, should there ever be any limits on humor or what some people think is funny? Now, this particular person who posted this has in the past told racial jokes and gay jokes. So I'm wondering, well, you're pretty selective, aren't you? You say rape jokes are never funny and sexist jokes are never funny, but apparently gay jokes and racist jokes are okay. So
Yeah.
then that made me think, well, what about Holocaust jokes? What about 9/11 jokes? You know, my personal belief is that nothing is sacred when it comes to humor. That when it comes to comedy, nothing should be off limits. Comedy has been a tool for dealing with tragedy and horror ever since humans learned to speak. Now, having said that, someone might find a particular brand of humor distasteful. Rape is a horrible crime. I don't even know, like, to say I don't condone it to me is even silly because how could anyone condone it?
Yeah.
But if a comedian like Anthony Jeselnik or Daniel Tosh, who are famous for offensive humor, get on stage and tell a rape joke, I have no problem with it. If you know the type of material that these comedians use, don't buy a ticket. Don't watch their shows on HBO or Showtime or whatever. Just avoid them. Don't give them your dollar. You know,
Mhm.
that's my feeling about it. I have a very thick skin. I am a fat, nerdy, balding guy, and I've heard every fat, nerd, and bald joke ever. A lot of them make me laugh. A lot of them are just stupid and not funny, you know? But I
Yeah.
don't turn around and say, "How dare you make fun of bald guys? Fuck you." I I, I don't care, you know.
Well,
And I'm certainly
exactly.
not
Yeah.
comparing going bald to getting raped, you know. So relax on the hate mail, people. Like, come on. So anyway,
And that's
I've always just wondered, should what if any limits should there be when it comes to humor? Is anything really off limits?
well, and I personally have never thought anything should be off limits. Like you, there are certain things that I may not go there in terms of making a joke or repeating a joke that I've heard, but that doesn't mean that nobody should be able to make that joke. You know, this is still a society where we are able to say things no matter how unappealing or how distasteful they may be to somebody. I know it's going to be hard for today's generation, millennials, to understand this, but the forerunner of bad taste and profanity was Lenny Bruce,
Sure.
and Lenny Bruce liked to use four-letter words, sometimes nine-letter words, or however many letters cocksucker is, I forget. And he would have sometimes police standing in the club he was working at, waiting for him to say fuck or something else so they could arrest him. Now, if that happened today, there'd be this entire uproar. But when this was happening back in the late 50s and 60s, that's how it was. And it's amazing to me that we've gone from Lenny Bruce breaking barriers and doing that to George Carlin and some of the others who have made their way to today, where people get offended by the slightest thing.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I brought up the other day in a Facebook post. Like, when it comes to people being offended, yes, we seem to live in a world where everyone seems to be offended by everything, but I don't think that means that people should go out of their way to be assholes. Like, I don't think you should say hurtful things to people and then couch it by saying, "Oh, you're just offended by that." Well, you know what? Maybe they are. If I don't know, if I made fun of somebody's dead grandmother at the woman's funeral, that's probably in pretty poor fucking taste, you
Yeah.
know? And I would never do such a thing, you know? Um, so there is such a thing as poor taste, and I do believe that. But when we start saying, like, X kind of jokes are not funny, well, who gets to decide that? So women get to decide rape jokes are not funny. Okay. Well, again, what about like Holocaust jokes? Are they okay? Or, black jokes, Puerto Rican joke, pick anything that refers to a group of people or an event like 9/11 or what have you. Pick anything. And I'm sure you could make the case that someone would find it to be in poor taste.
There was a book that came out when I was a kid. It was 101 uses for a dead cat.
Yes, I remember that.
And
I remember that.
I loved that book. I thought it was the funniest thing I had ever seen in my life. My mother was just horrified by it. She thought it was absolutely in poor taste, particularly the pencil sharpener.
Yes. Yes.
So, can't really remember what my father thought about it. I think he probably laughed at it. But now, granted, I was a kid, and those are the kinds of jokes that kids find funny. Anything that has to do with bodily functions, or dead animals is automatically going to be funny. Now, does that necessarily mean that it's going to be funny when I grow up? Maybe, maybe not. Although I still think that book is pretty fucking funny.
It is, and you're someone who had a cat and
Yeah.
likes cats, and enjoys having them as pets.
No, exactly. And here's the thing: if I posted something from that book today, I would be called an animal hater. I would be called an animal abuser. And I say that because I've made comments and I've seen comments people have made. And knowing the people who make the comments, for example, there was a meme that was going around, and it was of an old woman, naked, shirtless, with the saggy boobs and everything, but it was painted like a smiley face. It was a funny picture, and I forget what the wording was that went with it. And somebody posted it, and everybody was having fun and laughing at it. Not laugh just because it was funny. And then some douche canoe, some twat with a broom up her ass says, "Well, I hope that woman doesn't have Alzheimer's, because it wouldn't be very funny to laugh at her if she did."
Wow.
And I thought, you know what? It's a fucking meme, okay? Get that stick out of your ass and beat a sense of humor into yourself with it. I couldn't believe somebody would actually be stupid enough to post something like that. And then I thought, well, why are you surprised at that? There's
Right.
plenty of stupid people around who will take offense at anything. And that's one of those things where it was like they were just looking for something to be offended by.
Yeah, and that's all. And someone just looking to put their self-righteous indignation on display. You know, um, you probably remember this, Scott. Do you remember in the mid to late '80s there was a series of paperback books that came out called Truly Tasteless Jokes by Blanche
Yep.
Knott? Do you remember those? I think
had.
I still have them all somewhere. I will never forget. My mother found my stash of these books and went berserk, that I had them. And then one day I caught her reading one of them and giggling. And I said, "You see? Everybody at some point will find one of these horrible, horrible jokes to be funny." You
Yep.
know? So, and they were mostly filled with dead baby jokes,
Yeah.
which were all the rage for a time, right? I was telling them in 5th grade. So now, does that make me a horrible person because I tell a dead baby joke?
Yeah, yes, it does. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Well, that's not what makes me a horrible person, but
It's the actual dead babies in your basement.
Yeah. Well, hey, actually, they're not in the basement. That's the first place they look.
That's very true. That's very true. That's why I had to move.
So now I had no choice. I looked up, the Truly Tasteless Joke series, and of course on Amazon they will show you the first few pages of the book.
Yep.
And I'm giggling. I'm just giggling because what is the first chapter? Dead baby jokes.
All right,
and then the second chapter, Helen Keller jokes. See, I don't even have to tell you one, and you're laughing already. Direct order hate mail to Scott Colbert.
I'm just laughing at all the responses that you'll be getting. That's all.
I'm going to start posting these.
You actually should. Well, let's hear a couple of them.
I'm going to make myself laugh, and I'm going to have a coughing attack. How do you fit 1,000 dead babies in a phone booth?
How?
La machine.
No, people aren't going to know what a la machine is.
That's true. A food processor.
Exactly. Yeah.
How do you get them out?
A straw?
Yes. Look at you. You remember. What's the perfect gift for a dead baby?
What?
A dead puppy.
Of course. Why didn't I think of that?
That's awful, isn't it?
It is.
How did Helen Keller meet her husband?
How?
It was a blind date. See?
Yeah.
Why does Helen Keller masturbate with one hand?
So she can moan with the other.
And lastly, one more. Why did Helen Keller's dog jump off a cliff?
Why?
You would too if your name was. See? Dude, I will see you in hell. I will see you in hell.
That last one was fun. Oh, Jesus.
Oh.
Well, but you know what?
See?
We don't have to worry about offending deaf people with that because they're not going to hear it.
That's true.
So. Oh, dear. Yes. That's funny.
So anyway.
So when was it that people started getting offended by everything? And I know it's not necessarily something new because, obviously people were offended by Lenny Bruce back in the 60s and people were offended by Carlin. And, Carlin had, a lot of his own court battles too.
Oh, sure.
Over the 70s.
Did Richard Pryor, As you mentioned, Lenny Bruce, a lot of them did. I mean, the obscenity laws back then were very, very tough. People like Lenny Bruce, Richard Pryor, all paved the way for the comedians of today. Amy Schumer, Daniel Tosh. None of them would exist without those pioneers.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, at least with Carlin, he started out very clean.
Yeah, he did. Look, and I am a fan of all kinds of humor. Like, before we learned that Bill Cosby was a monster, and even what? Fuck it. Even the fact that he is, to me, I still think Bill Cosby himself is one of the funniest comedy specials ever.
Yep.
The fact that he turned out to be, pretty much a rapist, and something that's a good thought right there. Like, I think people are confused about how they should feel now about the Cosby Show or about Bill Cosby's past achievements, given what we know now. Like, should I be apologizing because I think he was funny at one time?
I still find him funny, just like you do. I was never a huge fan of the show, but I loved his stand-up. Growing up, I had just about all of his stand-up albums that he had put out. And his bit about Noah building the ark is still one of the funniest pieces of stand-up comedy I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, and the dentist routine.
Yeah.
Still makes me cry to this day because it points out something we all can relate to.
Yeah. And am I not suddenly not going to laugh at it because of what he's done outside of his comedy? It's one of those things. You should be able to separate the artist from the art. I think it was Stephen King had in the foreword to one of his books, it's the tale and not he who tells it.
Yeah.
And I love that quote because, let's face it, most artists, most comedians, most actors, we generally have kind of an asshole side to us. I think that's just, the nature of being an artist for some reason. But, you kind of have to try at least to divorce yourself from the actual person. Now, that's not always easy because there are some artists and some writers and some actors who are just, well, for example, Ted Nugent. By any stretch of the imagination, Ted Nugent is a douchebag.
Yeah.
And as try as I might to separate him from a song like Cat Scratch Fever, I can't do it. Just because he's so obnoxiously a douchebag about his politics and his beliefs, I can't separate them. And I just can't listen to his music anymore.
Yeah, I'll buy that. I think the difference is we kind of have known for decades that he was a dick. Whereas with some other people, it sort of comes out later. When I was watching Bill Cosby's comedy specials, 20 some odd years ago, and watching the Cosby Show, I had no idea. So now, I have to go back in retrospect and sort of think about it. Where I was going somewhere with that whole thing. Oh, I remember. To me, things are either funny or they're not. There's a lot of comedians that work very clean that I happen to like very much.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's, like I said, there's comedians like Anthony Jeselnik or Amy Schumer that, are filthy, or even Bob Saget. Like, to me, he's always the one that like catches you off guard because he was on Full House.
Yeah.
And then when you see his stand up, it's completely filthy, and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
But to me, something's either funny or it's not. You can work clean, and I might find it funny. You can work blue, and I will either find it funny or I won't. And I just think people Like, people should know better. Like, if you find a particular brand of humor in poor taste, I get that. That's not up to me to judge. You know, if you're sensitive to, humor, dead baby humor, and, maybe it was a death of a child in a family and it strikes a nerve with you. I get it. Um, but like I said, then you should just sort of shy away from comedians that go with that sort of dark material. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
that's all. Like, I'm not going to tell anyone else that they shouldn't listen to Ted Nugent. I don't fucking care.
You should know your own limits, but you don't have to place them on other people.
Yeah,
Your limits,
exactly.
your limits are just that, your limits. And because of that, you can't deny anybody else from enjoying somebody. If somebody wants to listen to Ted Nugent, I don't care. That doesn't mean I have to associate with them. If you like Ted Nugent, just unfriend me right now.
Yeah, it's again,
A little extreme.
yeah, a little bit. And I think on one episode, we talked about Lisa Lampanelli, and I
Yeah.
think you said you like her,
Yeah.
which is fine. I totally respect that. I just find her to be caustic for the sake of shock value, as opposed to being funny while being shocking. But that's just me. Again, if you like her, okay. How does that affect me in any way?
Well, yeah, exactly. Although I will say she's not nearly as funny since she lost all the weight.
Oh, I wouldn't even know that. I wouldn't even know. I haven't seen what she looks like.
And hopefully she doesn't hear this because she follows me on Twitter.
Hold on. Now I have to look. What?
Yeah,
Holy shit.
Yeah, she's a completely different person.
She's almost doable now.
Oh, who are you kidding? You would have done her back when she was, 200 pounds. Don't give me that.
Yeah, probably.
If she has a pulse, she's doable.
My oak tree has kind of a knot in it, and the pulse, I'm not really sure. But, no, but holy shit, I had no idea she lost that much weight.
Yeah, she had the gastric bypass, I think.
Oh, okay. Wow, she's really thin now.
Yeah, she's not half the person she used to be.
I find that offensive.
Yeah, well, what? Go fuck yourself. See if I care.
Listen, if I could, I would never leave the house.
Yeah, if I could do that, please put your seat back forward. And that way, if I could do that, I'd be making porno movies.
Yeah,
Thanks, George. Yep. Oh, George Carlin line. And, he's the one that keeps coming to mind every time we talk about offensive humor. And he did a bit, and I've talked about this before, about rape specifically. He talks about, rape can be funny. Picture Porky Pig raping Elmer Fudd.
Right.
Hey, why do you think it was called Porky, huh? And, he talks about these guys who you sometimes hear about go out and commit a burglary, and sometimes they rape an 83-year-old woman. And I think to myself, why? What the hell kind of a social life does this guy have? And he goes on for a good length about that. And, the thing is, obviously, people who have been abused and raped are not going to find that funny. But I don't imagine that they would probably be listening to Carlin in the first place.
Exactly. And Scott, I honestly do struggle with this a little bit because I do try to be fair to people's sensibilities. Everyone has a different life experience than I do. I'll just give an example. My mother passed away from cancer 2 years ago, and someone told a cancer joke the other day, and I thought it was freaking hysterical. But That's because I personally am able to separate the two things. My brain didn't immediately make that connection, you
Yeah.
know? For some people, it might, though. My thing, though, and I've had this discussion with other people, is we all have dealt with pain and sadness and tragedy. That doesn't mean that I now suddenly need a safe zone every time I hear something, that might trigger me. Apparently,
Yeah.
that's a new fucking word now, trigger, as it refers to something other than a part of a gun,
Yeah. Yeah.
Now all of a sudden it trigger. In certain colleges, they can't teach Greek mythology anymore because in some of the myths, like the rape of the Sabine women, you can't teach that anymore because that might trigger somebody. What in the actual fuck is that all about? We better put all literature on the shelf now, other than Charlotte's Web, which I don't know. Now maybe all the arachnophobes will, sue to have Charlotte's Web removed from the library shelves, because it triggers their fear of fucking spiders. I don't know.
I heard that term trigger, I guess maybe about a year ago. And the first time I heard it, I thought, this has got to be a joke. This really has to be some kind of a joke. Maybe it was in the Onion or something, because you know how people like to post things from the Onion thinking it's an actual news story. But no, this person was dead serious about trigger warnings, and I thought, holy shit. One of those few times in my life I was speechless about something. It is the stupidest fucking thing. Well, and their reaction was, well, if somebody who was raped reads about a rape, or somebody who has PTSD reads about something about PTSD, it could call, well, you know what? Then maybe they're just too sensitive to fucking read. Where do you draw the line? Because they were wanting to have trigger warnings, and not even just like in the colleges, but on actual books. They were hoping Amazon would put trigger warnings for all of their books.
Unbelievable. Like wasn't it that people used to criticize? You all right there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Okay, so you were heavy breathing just because it's me on the other end of the phone. That's okay. I get it.
I was touching.
I get that a lot.
I was touching myself inappropriately.
Nice.
I was raping myself.
Why did you have to say that word? It triggered me. God, you're such a dick.
Hey, that word triggered me.
Oh, that's it. Show's over, folks.
Letters.
No.
Letters. All right, go ahead.
All right. It used to be that colleges were like bastions of free speech, and we used to make fun of like liberalism of colleges. Now it seems to be regressing. Like, where did all these pussified college students come from? Like, oh, we need safe spaces now because words hurt. What? Yeah, you know what? Words can hurt. I've said things to people in my life that were hurtful that I regret. But those were on one situations where I said something in a fit of anger that I wish I could reel back. Not in like just a normal social discourse where, hey, Scott, did you read this? I read this great book about the Vietnam War. Oh, hey, no, don't talk about the war. What?
Yeah.
Now we got to worry about like what we say in passing or what topic comes up in a group conversation. Thankfully, I don't seem to associate with people, who are so sensitive.
Yeah, I can't do that. I really can't. There's Facebook groups that I belong to, some movie groups and some political groups, And sometimes I find myself wanting to write something that I think is funny, but I have to look at it and say, well, is somebody going to take offense to this, and are they going to start, some kind of an argument over what I said? And I thought, well, probably. Then I don't say it, or I don't write it, or I don't post it, because quite honestly, I really don't want to have the hassle. And it's sad. I kind of self-censor myself that way. But, I guess that's just how the internet rolls.
Yeah, I do that too. At least 3 or 4 times a day, I get most of the way, or even all of the way through a Facebook post or a Twitter post, and then I just turn around and I delete the whole thing
Yep.
because I'm like, you know what? I'm just raising my blood pressure for no good reason, you know.
Yep.
And I just don't feel like dealing with it. And not that I'm really care about what anyone thinks about what I'm expressing. It's because I'm not going to be able to resist the urge to have a comeback for every comment that people leave. And
Well,
I'll end up getting sucked down that vortex, you know?
Yep.
And then next thing you know, my boss is like, what the fuck did you do all day today? Defended myself against assholes on Twitter. Oh, well, all right. Well, type up your resume and go do that somewhere else. All right. So this goes back maybe a year. Talking about Facebook or posting things. There was some kind of one of these cases where there was some sort of sexual assault on a college campus on some girl who I can't remember the details, but apparently had been, the boy and a girl in a party were making out. Things got a little heated. They decided to go upstairs to one of the bedrooms. At some point, apparently she passed out, and he didn't stop, and things, went from there. Now, when I posted on the thread about this incident, I said, my God, how fucking awful is that? Like, what a douche. Like, once the girl passes out, like, I don't get that. I've never understood the appeal of trying to have sex with a girl who's passed out or incoherent.
Yeah.
I just don't get it. I want an alive, awake, full participant in the proceedings,
Yeah.
But that's just me, but I never got it. So I came out vehemently against this guy. But along the way, I've said, something about, like, clearly, though, there were witnesses that had said that this girl was clearly sending the signals, and things were going, and I said, well, I think everyone has to take responsibility for their actions.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I got fucking vilified. And someone said, well, listen, if a girl wants to take off her clothes and give a guy a lap dance, she should be able to go ahead and do that and not have to worry about getting raped. I'm like, you're absolutely right. I agree with you 1,000%. But why would she do that?
Well,
Like what? Why do that? Just because you can? I, I I plan on raising my daughter like when you go to college, don't go to fucking frat parties and get so drunk that you don't know what where you are. There are bad people in the world. I wish there weren't, but there are. So you need to take steps to not make yourself a victim. You know, I don't leave my front door wide open with piles of cash on the floor. A, because I don't have piles of cash, but B, if I did, I wouldn't do that and then say, "Can you believe someone robbed me?" How the fuck did that happen? No one has a right to rob me, and they don't. But why even put yourself in that position? Once again, let the hate mail flow. Sorry.
and the reverse of that is if you do take advantage of that situation of a girl who's so drunk she's passed out, and you do have sex with her and you do rape her, then you have to be prepared to face the consequences.
Absolutely.
Unless you're
Absolutely.
a rich white swimmer. If you're black and from the ghetto, then you're going to jail. But a rich
Oh
white
yeah,
swimmer,
absolutely. They're gonna throw away the fucking key, you know?
yeah. Unfortunately, we live in a society where we like to victim blame, but people do need to take responsibility for their actions, as well as the perpetrators. Although it's really hard to say, guys, just keep your dick in your pants, because somebody who's going to do that would probably do it regardless.
Yeah, look, I am a believer that well, two things. One, my father instilled values in me. My father taught me not to hurt other people,
Yeah.
especially women. And not only that, always had like hopefully most other normal people do, an innate sense of right and wrong, you know? Some people are just not wired right. And no amount of sensitivity training or, you know, teaching our men not to rape, a bad person is a bad person. Let's like saying, well, let's teach people not to murder. Let's teach people not to steal.
Yeah.
Well, society has already told us that those things are wrong, and some people do them anyway.
And so we take precautions. We lock our doors. We protect ourselves. We do the things that we need to do for personal safety. I mean,
Yeah, and look, again, maybe I just think differently than some other people. Like even when I was in college, I did my share of drinking, and I know it's different. I'm speaking as a male. I get that, but I just don't like not being in control of myself or of my surroundings.
mm-hmm.
I don't like not being able to process information or understand what's happening around me because again, I'm not. It's not necessarily that I'm worried about getting sexually assaulted, but I also don't want someone to fucking rob me either,
Oh
or
yeah.
steal my wallet or what have you, because I have no concept of what's going on. Um, I don't know, man. I don't apologize for my stance on this. I really don't. There are people that don't speak to me anymore because of my feelings on this. They don't seem to be able to process the fact that I think rape is a horrible, horrible crime, and anyone who does it, regardless of the circumstances, should be thrown in a pit somewhere and forgotten about. Versus not putting yourself in a situation where you could be a victim. I don't understand why people can't see that those can be mutually exclusive.
Because that would mean people taking personal responsibility for their actions. And you know how much people love to do that.
Got it. Okay.
So, and that's just one of those. And this does not make it okay, certainly, but that's just the society that we live in now. Everybody wants to put the responsibility on anybody else except them. They want to blame everything and everyone and everything you could imagine, but not take responsibility for their own actions. That's just how it is.
Yeah, I guess we talk about it all the time about shitty parents churn out shitty children who grow up to be shitty adults.
And even good parents can turn out shitty kids.
Absolutely.
And those are the ones that are wired just a little bit differently.
Yeah, like I had a conversation with someone the other day, like and not to turn back to this, but after the Orlando shooting, there are people who are are like, oh, why does there have to be hate in the world? Why does there have to be violence? Because that's what we are as a species.
Yeah.
You know, we just are. A lot of us have or I should say most of us, not a lot, just keep that beast at bay, and we go about our daily lives. We don't hurt other people. We don't take what doesn't belong to us. Um, Not everybody has that switch, you know?
Well, exactly. Look, we live in really miraculous times. We've put, an unmanned space vehicle on the surface of Mars, for God's sake. We've cured diseases. We created the internet. We've done a lot of wonderful things, but we still have people who think the Earth is flat. So we may create and do wonderful things, but we're still not all that far from, the lower primates and the lower animals in society. We just know how to create and build and think and talk, and we have thumbs.
Yeah, that's what did it. Goddamn thumbs.
Yeah, thumbs, you can do anything if you got thumbs.
This is true. Opposable thumbs are especially helpful.
Well, definitely. Because two thumbs on the same hand isn't really going to do you a whole lot of good.
Yeah, no, although that would be funny.
Yeah.
But if we teased someone who had that, we would be horrible people.
Now we're going to get letters. Hey, man, I got two thumbs on one hand. That's not fucking funny. Well, good.
We probably just triggered somebody.
Well, good. Why don't you take those two thumbs and stick them up your ass?
Yeah, or, go ahead, sit in the corner and suck your thumbs.
Well, but, there is a guy who's got two penises, so, I'm sure there's probably somebody who's got two thumbs, too.
Yeah, oh, please, I'm sure.
So...
So, back to our topic of humor. Question, do you think it's appropriate, for people to hold protests outside of comedy shows?
Appropriate? No. If they want to do it, fine. I think you could pretty much protest anything that you want to. And if you read, the paper on a daily basis, you see people actually do that. But I think it's just a waste of time. It's like people who make these petitions on change.org for the stupidest fucking thing. Well, for anything, really. Because petitions don't change anything. And really, these demonstrations don't do a hell of a lot either.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot, about marches and demonstrations and stuff, and how there were times when such things changed the world. Yeah. When you think about Gandhi or Martin Luther King, those protests and those marches literally changed the world. We civil rights now, and we things that have happened because of that. Occupy Wall Street. Ultimately, what did that achieve? And I find it sad that it no longer has the impact that it does. And I think someone made a good point today. I'm not sure how I feel about it, though. They showed a picture of 1,000,000-something people in the streets of Cleveland celebrating the Cleveland Cavaliers for winning a sports championship. Mm. When's the last time 1,000,000 fucking people turned out for anything? Yeah, imagine if 1,000,000 people said, we are going to clog the streets of Washington, D.C. until you guys do something about gun violence. I wonder what would happen. Are you going to arrest 1,000,000 people?
Yeah.
We're going to sit on the steps of the Capitol and we're not moving until you do so. Again, you're going to arrest 1,000,000 people. So, and look, I am a sports fan, so I'm not saying you shouldn't go celebrate your team's victory, but I have mixed feelings about it because you get to wonder if I wonder if those million people are going to vote. You know,
Yeah.
probably not.
Well, I've had similar thoughts like that. I see people who get very invested in sports. My youngest nephew is like that. He's a huge sports nut for the New York Giants. So, it's really not his fault. He has a mental disability about that, and he has such passion for football. Yet you talk to him about anything else, like gun violence or poverty or things that really matter, and it's indifference. If people took as much excitement as they have for their favorite form of entertainment, whether it's sports or the Oscars or whatever, and they transferred even just half of that energy into something like hunger or healthcare or gun control or whatever, uh, you know, things that they believe in. Imagine how much could get done.
Yeah. People are not invested in social change anymore. And I wonder if it's because, and I'm not going to articulate this the way it is in my head. I understand that. I don't have the right words. But I wonder if it's because, like, all of the big milestones have been achieved. Like, women have the right to vote now. Black people are no longer segregated in restaurants and other things like that and on the bus. So other than now we have like smaller things that we're protesting, income inequality, things like that. Like, is it because all of the real big social change necessities have already been achieved? I don't know.
Well, I don't know either, but I do know that all of those things haven't been eliminated. Unfortunately, there's still racism, there's still sexism, still misogyny, still homophobia. There's still all of these things, and you can say, well, they're isolated incidences, but the more that you hear about them, the less isolated of an incident it seems to be. And it's turning into more and more of a daily recurrence in numerous places throughout the country. It used to be, racism. Well, you just don't go down south. You just stay out south, and that's not necessarily the case anymore because racism is all over this country. South, north, west, and east. And I don't know that we're ever going to end that.
Um, I don't know that you can, Scott, because now eventually, like, I think there still are pockets of systemic racism and sexism in the country. But as you whittle that down, like, and I think that as those things get identified, they do get dealt with. We had that big that big case here in New Jersey about racial profiling by the state troopers, and
Mm-hmm.
that got addressed, when it was uncovered. When you get down to the individual people, though, there's still going to be bigots in the world. There's still going to be homophobes in the world. I don't think you ever can completely eliminate that because people are people, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had a very and I know we're running down to the end of the show today, but I had a good conversation with a good friend the other day about how over time, like, people are getting better and the assholes among us are getting more and more marginalized. Think about it, dude. When we were younger, like, even when we were in high school, right? Could you have even conceived of gay marriage as a thing?
No, not at
Like,
all.
did you ever think it could ever possibly happen? and,
Definitely not.
and yet it did. So there are still problems there, but eventually, like, people are just the last bastions and holdouts will just sort of die off. Getting back to humor, Aziz Ansari is a favorite comedian of mine,
Hmm.
and he talks about that. He said, think about the people, like, people were against interracial marriage. They're almost all dead now. Eventually, all the people who are against gay marriage are going to be dead. He's like, me, there's still people that have problems with interracial. And every time I'm fucking a white girl, I think about those people. And, for just like 3 or 4 pumps, I'm like, yeah, I'm fucking a white girl. And there's nothing you can do about it. Because that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Eventually, 30 years from now, it'll be like, gay marriage, that was once a problem. Really? So the wheels turn slowly sometimes, but I think they do turn. When I think of where we are as a country now, with all the problems that we have, you know, um, the fact that gays are not getting stoned to death out in the streets
Yeah.
on a daily basis is a step forward.
Well, that's why they call it progress in that instant, because it progresses. These things don't happen overnight. It takes time. And it's one thing to say, well, but we can have change all at once if you believe, and then if you do it. Well, but you know what? Trying to get a country of 300 million people to believe in one thing altogether to change something ain't gonna happen.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
and you can think that I'm being cynical. Well, I'm just being a fucking realist. I know people. Everybody is not going to agree on everything.
Oh, of course not. Which is, again, we're we're a representative democracy.
Uh,
There's going to be laws that get passed that I don't personally agree with. But if it follows the will of the country and the good of the country, I got to suck it up. That's it.
well, yeah, and I think that's probably. Oh, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
Oh, please! It derailed at the station a long time ago.
No, actually, my mother just texted me, so.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, well, let's wrap this up. Can't solve the world's problems
Exactly.
in an hour. But I think if you're interested in comedy and you haven't checked out any of the people that we've talked about, go over to iTunes or wherever you get your MP3s from, and check out Carlin and Lenny Bruce and all the others, and give yourself a laugh, because God knows we could use a few chuckles these days.
Absolutely.
And if you like our show, and you damn well better, check out the other podcasts that we have at the Supernauts Network at thesupernauts.com. And until next time, may all of your journeys be filled with pure imagination.